we're going to talk about sermon ideas. We're going to talk about series content, right? Things that you like, some series that you might want to create. And then we're going to get down to it and really talk about communication tips. I've watched you, man, for those of you that don't know, we are with Taylor Murphy. He's out of Grand Rapids, Michigan at Grand Rapids First Church. 10, 11 years? How long you been doing this?
Yeah, about coming up on 11 years of doing youth ministry, preaching, and it's just crazy to think how many years I've been preaching with youth and young adults, and felt like I just started, and so...
Well, you did.
I know, right? I'm trying to catch up to you,
And I just saw Leah Murphy. That would be Mrs. Murphy. She's joining us right now too. So shout out and a wave to Leah. And John, Katina, man, I love when my friends join us. Terrence Brown, good to have you. Abigail, if you see anybody, just give them a shout too. That some of these might be your people, Taylor.
Yeah, for sure. Jumping on here.
So, what we're going to do, we're just talking free here for a little bit, saying hello to people, letting them text a friend to join us, and we're gonna break down some of these topics with Taylor. Let me tell you where it all started. I saw Taylor come in to college when I was teaching up in Minneapolis at North Central University, and came in as one of the school leaders as a freshman. Taylor's always had that maturity, and I think everybody that's known Taylor knew that God had this incredible plan for your life. And those that have shaped you before I even was able to get, that influence on you, did a fantastic job, because you came in ready to go. And we spent 4 years together. We spent probably 2 of those years really close in mentoring relationships on a weekly basis. Was able to help you get your first job as you traveled with one of my close friends, a young man that grew up in my youth ministry, Alan Griffin in Florida. And spent time with him and serving him, and then get your master's at Southeastern, and spent some time at a great church in Pennsylvania. Now 4 years, I think,
4.5 at Grand Rapids First.
And
so it's crazy.
That's who we're talking about. Trust me, you're going to learn a lot from this guy when it comes to preaching and teaching and communication tips. And Carter, good to have you. And Lydia, Noah Block, man. Hey, Taylor, Noah, I think is a junior now. He is at North Central just like you were, and he is going to be a great youth pastor.
Hey, we need more. We need more of those. And so,
oh my gosh. Yes, we do.
Stick in it, Noah. We need you.
Good. Taylor, tell us about your journey a little bit for the next couple of minutes, from like maybe where that call came, and then I'll tee up the first question.
I'd say, for me, I didn't grow up in church, and so I went to church because I liked a girl, and so went there. My youth pastor preached, and what's so interesting is that, being able to preach talk about preaching and the importance of it, and how to engage students and how to make sure your messages are relatable, is that the reason I went back to youth group was because I enjoyed my youth pastor's message. I wasn't involved in church. I thought it was weird. I thought the worship was weird. I thought that the people there were weird, but I went back because the youth pastor was a good communicator, and I felt like his words spoke to me. And so, I went back and ended up giving my life to Jesus. And then after that, got called into ministry at a camp. And so Reggie Dabbs was preaching at a camp. And so going back to that power of a good communicator, the power of preaching well and preaching effective, my life was forever changed because Reggie Dabbs preached a message that after that he did an altar call. Kids responded to the altar, and because they responded to the altar, I was able to see that, and then God spoke to me, said, hey, this is what you're going to do for the rest of your life. You're going to help people come to know me. And so there's power in communication. There's power in how you do it. Life change can happen. And so it happened in my life. And then, after that, went to North Central. Then, like you said, went down to work with Alan Griffin, an incredible communicator. Learned a lot from him, and got to go and be a youth pastor in the Poconos, and then back here at Grand Rapids First. And so, just love studying preaching, love studying how to engage kids, especially nowadays. I feel like it's even more difficult And so it's just it's a really, and the thing is that I really believe that it's still important. You know,
Oh, yes.
we can't not have preaching. You know, we can't not have communication, and but I think we have to do it in a way that's engaging. We have to do it in a way
That's
that
good.
meets people's needs,
Good.
and because it you know it gives people opportunity to hear from the Lord and then respond.
I
And
love
so
it. Listen, we're talking with Taylor Murphy out of Grand Rapids First Church in Michigan, and we're talking about Gen Z, Alpha Gen, and preaching. Now, I hear it. Listen, oh, Dylan McNeely, do not tell me that you're on this, but isn't there a game tonight? Anyway, I love you, Dylan. Kissing you right now. Mwah. Listen, yeah, you love him. Micah, good to have you here too. Listen, people say all the time preaching doesn't matter.
yeah,
That the Gen Z, start with the millennials. The millennials didn't want it. The Gen Z didn't want it. And Alpha Gen is not going to listen to it. Let me tell you something. I don't know who's doing those studies. I've read that stuff. That is not true. Um, that is not my experience. And I know that it is not, most of you that are following us right now, I know that is not your experience. I hear people say things like this: preaching doesn't matter. Um,
hmm
they don't want to sit there and listen. They want relationship and blah blah blah. Well, listen to me. When did we remove relationship and preaching?
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? You
yeah,
can have it both. And I think what happens is we have this thing, well, they can only listen for, a few minutes or a few seconds at first. And then if you get them a few minutes, I'm telling you, if you could just be around some of the great communicators of the gospel, the storytellers of the gospel, and look at the crowds of teenagers who are in,
yeah,
locked in. There
yeah,
are simple things that you can do to see the same thing in your setting.
yeah.
So let me tee up the first question for you.
hmm
Um, Maybe there are youth leaders here. Nick, man, good to have you here too, man. Maybe there are youth leaders here that are wondering about ideas or topics, things that they could preach on, right?
hmm
Um, I know that you've been around creating series for a long time.
Yeah,
Could you give us five, I don't know, themes or topics that youth need to hear?
yeah, yeah. So I kind of want to go two different directions with this to
Do it.
hopefully explain kind of what I do, and then even give an option that something I've changed over the past year and a half that I really think could be the direction that we need to go in the youth ministry. The past 10 years, probably 9 years, I've done the concept of, preach on a theme for a month, or, hear from the Lord, or, so I'll do that aspect. I'll talk about that aspect. So if you're a youth pastor here, youth leader, and you're like, okay, how do I get a sermon series, or what do I do, or what are some tips? And so a couple things that I do, or that I did, and then I'll go into the second part, is that the first thing is that I would focus on what is God speaking to me. And so
Mm,
hopefully you're getting into the word. Hopefully
yes.
you're being challenged by God, and God's convicting you. And then what you do is you take that and you create a sermon series that you want to share. Robert Madu, he said that some of the best messages come from our own convictions. Um,
100%.
and I love that. And so he said, you'll always have new material if you're constantly in the word and you're growing spiritually.
So good.
Um, and so that's one aspect of when I create content. The other aspect is what I try to look at what my kids are going through. And so I try to,
Yes.
through conversations that I have with them and things that I talk about with them. And then I kind of say, okay, you know what, maybe I should talk about this because it seems like a lot of my youth kids, or a lot of my kids are going through this, and they could use some help with that. And so that's another thing. And I think that's good for us youth pastors to make sure that we're involved in the lives of our kids, and we're engaged, and we know what they're going through.
So
We
good.
know what they're struggling with. If we're so far disconnected from them, and not in relationship and friendship with them, then it's going to be hard to preach content that they're
So
going to relate to.
good. Listen, I want to cap those two real quick, and then you can keep going.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, what you just heard is Dylan, I'll get to that question. It's a great question because we're going to get to that one last. Um, there are two ways that you're bringing up of finding the content for preaching. I'm gonna give two words for it that I've been looking at lately. One is prophetic, and that's what you're talking about, hearing what God is saying to you, right? What is God speaking to me? Those could be prophetic things. And the second one is pathetic. And let me explain it. I know what you're thinking, pathetic being terrible. No, 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 no. Pathetic being pathos. And that is what is the passion of the crowd and the target. And their pathos is what you're talking about. You are talking about what is, let my kids define what I'm going to preach on because they're struggling with suicide or they're, right, et cetera, identity and sexuality and family and racism. And it's when we talk about those kind of things, it's pathos because that's the passion in the room. So we're connecting prophetically what you said first and then with pathos. So great. Add to that.
Yeah. And then the last thing I do is that I preach just on cultural things that are going on in our culture, things that kids are connected to in our culture. And so that's another thing too, and this is a big thing with youth leaders I try to say, is you don't have to act like them. You don't have to feel like you're young and you have to act young. But if you know what's going on in their lives, if you understand not just their lives, but what's going on in culture, then you can preach on that. I love Reggie Dabbs. He talked about how he would study different aspects of what's happening in culture so he could be relatable. And so I love that, and I thought that's so important because that keeps you in a place where you still can relate. It doesn't matter how old you get, doesn't matter how far, how long you've done ministry. So yeah, those are the three things that I do, or that I did. So I kind of want to quickly just go to the part that I'm doing now because I really would love to teach and help next gen leaders with this because I think it's going to really help.
It will. And we just had a question about that. So this is a great segue. The question was, what does your rhythm look like? How are you doing it now? I will say, Andy Manley sent us in a question too. I know you know Andy.
Love Andy.
Yes. And Andy's question, wow, what a great youth leader he was out in Montana, right? Is it Montana?
Yeah.
Yeah, Montana. Andy, man, shout to you. Andy said, when you're dealing with a difficult topic, who influences you and how do you do that? So maybe we can get to that at the very end. I'll try to bring that up. But hit your rhythms. What are you doing now?
So what I do now, and this is something that it was just kind of coming through conviction and also just prayer and processing and even having space to be creative, and really think through how can I really impact and disciple these kids. And so I kind of came up with this concept and just through studies and talking with my team, where what we're going to start doing is that every year we're going to have a rhythm where we preach on 7 topics that are our seven pillars of our ministry, and we're going to do 7 months of that, and then we're going to have a couple filler months. So I'll explain kind of what it is. So our 7 pillars, and this is what we want teens to leave our youth ministry with, what we want them to leave with when they graduate. So the first thing is that we want them to get saved. The second thing is we want them to read their Bible and pray. Third thing is we want them to be baptized. Fourth thing, we want them to go to church on Sunday. So that's a big thing we push. The fifth thing is we want them to serve. Sixth thing is we want them to give. And then seventh thing is we want them to evangelize.
Did you guys hear that? These are the 7 things that every teenager should learn walking out of Taylor's ministry. I call them non-negotiables. I blogged on non-negotiables that we should be preaching on every year. Taylor, powerful. Keep going.
So what we do is that, September, we do the first one. October, we do the second one. So that's baptism. Third one we do is reading our Bible and praying. Fourth one, so what we'll do is we'll take a gap in December because that's kind of like the time where Christmas is. So we'll do kind of like a off-topic sermon series. So we did a sermon series on the Holy Spirit this December. We'll start back up in January. We'll do the pillars January, February, March, April. And that's evangelism ends in April. And then May, we'll do a one-off sermon series. And then June, July, and August, we will do books of the Bible. And we'll really push our kids to get into the Bible and reading. And so this summer, we're going to do the book of Mark. And so that'll be June and July will be the book of Mark. And then August we take off. And then we reset. And so it's so important for us because we want kids to know those pillars. So if we have a kid come into our ministry that's a sixth grader, he or she's going to hear that content for 5 to 6 years, and then eventually, and our prayer is that they're going to know those things and subconsciously or whatever, and then they're going to leave with that information. And so, and it just got to the point for me where after doing 10 years of just picking random topics or picking things kind of like what I talked to you about, I was like, I want to do something that's consistent. I want to do something where we're teaching these kids to be discipled. On those off months, we'll do something that's like a hot topic or something that we want them to.
You know what I'm loving is you're going against the grain. You're going upstream.
Yeah.
You're doing something a little different than a lot of people are doing. Man, listen, I'm out there and I hear it, and I know you do too.
Mm-hmm.
Do we really need another Avengers series?
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Listen, if you can turn it to theology, great. But do we really need another series on Stranger Things?
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Listen, this generation, it has a, how can I say it kindly? I can't. This generation has no theological foundation. It's 4%.
Mm-hmm.
That's and Alpha Gen, they're thinking between 4 and 6, so it really didn't change. 4 to 6% for Alpha Gen, biblical worldview. So whatever we did in our preaching and our teaching the last decade, we should quit because it didn't work. And I love this plan that you're getting to lay out for the year 7 for you, non-negotiables that these students must learn when they leave our next gen ministry.
Yeah, and it's so cool because what I've found is that our kids, they love it because we basically we answer the question. So what is salvation? How do I get saved? So our sermons are based around the questions. And so this is kind of my teaching on how to preach, is that I always try to say, hey, answer a question. And so we'll say, hey, today we're going to talk about what is salvation. Next week is how do I get saved? Okay. The next thing would be, who saves me? And so I always try to answer a question, and our kids, they learn so much, and they're like, man, this is stuff we've never heard, or this is stuff we would be, and I think going back to what you're saying about like the Avengers and all those sermon series, and those are great, but the thing is that they get that type of quality on TikTok, on videos, but the content of something that's deeper, they're asking questions, am I saved, am I not saved, all those things. And so answering a question is going to help them a lot more than trying to be relatable or, and I don't have anything against those. Those are great sermon series. But for me, I was just convicted where it's like, I need to know that we're discipling these kids and we're giving them content. We're giving them content that's actually going to help with those steps.
I love it.
And for me and my team, like, hey, we got to preach this well. We gotta make it so that it's like, I wouldn't say entertaining, but it's engaging. It's got to be stuff that and so you can put the Avengers in it if you want, or you can put all that stuff in it. But my thing is, you gotta keep those basic things, those pillars, the focus. And then I just wanted it to be a yearly thing where we do it every single year because I wanted them to get it.
I love it. The other thing I love that you're bringing up, and this is Craig. One of our great DYDs in Florida, Craig Hicks, just asked the question, is this outline going to be available to us? Yes, it will. It'll be up by Tuesday. I always post this onto the website. If you just go to the socials, all you need to do is hit the link tree, and you can watch this on YouTube. You can listen to it on the iTunes podcast, or I'll have the manuscript up from these notes. I walk through this and create the manuscript. It'll be on youthology.com. But just go to the link tree in our socials. Again, we're talking to Taylor Murphy at Grand Rapids First Church in Michigan, and we're talking about Gen Z, Alpha Gen, and preaching. And he just gave us the 7 pillars. We call them around here non-negotiables that students need to hear every year so that when they graduate out of our Next Gen Ministry, they have this
Yeah.
foundation. And Taylor just gave us 7, and again, we'll recap that. But here's let's go back to Andy's question.
Hmm.
Andy Manley is a great friend of ours. Um, was in the rural setting for years with quality ministry there. Andy, we need to catch up again. But Andy asked, and this goes with uh, what you said about answering questions with our
Yeah.
preaching. And I noticed Clint Nelson, he's in Florida too. Great youth pastor, Pastor Clint. And he just said the same thing, man. What a great concept of answering questions from in our sermons. So a hot topic comes up, right? Maybe, let's just say sexuality, or
Hmm.
let's say racism, or let's say the family,
Yeah.
right? The family today. Where do you get your content help? The collaboration, the study. Where do you find sermon material
Hmm.
for a specific topic?
Yeah, I mean, I use an app, or it's amazing. It's changed my life. I've done a lot of work. It's called it changed its name, but it used to be called Scribed. And so Scribed is one of the greatest resources I've ever gotten. It's kind of like Amazon, whatever, Kindle or something like that. But
Right.
Scribed has so much more to offer. It has articles, it has commentaries, it has like everything you'd want. You have audiobooks, it has other books. And so all my interns, all the college kids I invest in, kids I mentor, I encourage them to download Scribe, because when I'm studying content, whatever, if it's a hot topic, I look at that, because that is, and obviously you can use Google and,
Yeah.
make sure your sources are solid, but I'm telling you, Scribed is a life changer. Like I'm reading so many books, I'm getting so much content. Like it's just,
And
it's,
they
and
reference too.
yeah,
And because a lot of times you're going to find something and it's not referenced. People go, "Where'd you get that?" And maybe you just heard it.
yeah,
So Scribe will give you the reference to a statistic or finding.
yeah. No, Scribed is, and what I love about it is that you can highlight parts in the book, and then you can go to the saved option, and you can literally see all of your highlights for that book. And it's just, so I can go back to content. Like I wrote a ton of content on Gen Z and millennials for our youth team, and it was tons of articles on Scribe for Gen Z and millennials. So wrote a whole leadership talk on that for our team, and I gave that to every single new leader we have. And so I'd say that resource for me is just, it's life changing. I know a lot of other people use different content or different websites, but that's just for me. And it's like $12 a month. And so it's a great resource. I use it all the time. And the cool thing is that, Leah uses it so she can read her books. And so it's a great resource.
So again, Taylor Murphy. This is Taylor Murphy out of Grand Rapids First Church. Taylor, if our followers want to get a hold of you, I will add you. Obviously, they can just follow you by getting on your IG and
Hmm.
get to the DMs and all that. But where's a good place for them to find you?
Yeah. Instagram would be great. DMs. I can text my phone number in here if you want to get my phone number. I'm down for whatever. I love
Great,
connecting with people, love helping people. It's a huge passion of mine, is helping youth
good.
pastors, next gen pastors
Put your phone
with whatever.
number. Put your
All
phone
right,
number in the comments. I've
I'll
done
put
that a
it.
couple of times here too. Um, So when it comes to tips, let's finish with this. We've got about 5 to 7 minutes. Jordan Hall, good to have you. Man, so many great friends on here. Um, give us 2 or 3 tips, okay? Haley, thanks for house. Good to have you here. Two or
Mhm.
three creative tips to help us as communicators communicate to Gen Z and Alpha Gen.
Yeah, I think the first thing, which I think a lot of youth pastors and pastors stop doing, is studying communication. And so I say the first tip, and it seems simple, but is constantly and continue to study, not just preaching, communication.
Great.
My level of communication went to a whole nother level or dimension when I started studying more and more about communication. And so I love preaching books; they're solid, but studying communication and how to be an effective communicator, it took me to a whole nother level because there's so much content that you can learn from other people that are just great communicators. One of the best books that I've ever read on communication, if you guys want to take a note of this, it's Talk Like Ted.
Okay.
One of the best books. It's basically, it talks about all the TED Talk people that would do TED Talks, and they gave all these insights of how incredible of a communicator they were, and all these things of how they communicated. And it's something I teach our interns. It's just an incredible book. So I'd recommend. It's the best book I've ever read on communication.
That's
So I'd say
great.
study communication. The second thing is I would work on not what you say, but how you say it. And so I'd really focus on communicating with your body more, communicating with your voice more, with your face, with your smile, communicating with how much you move across the pulpit or move across the stage. Or I'd work really, really hard on how you communicate instead of just what you're saying. And that's something that I think can go to a whole nother level. There was an incredible communicator that John Lindell's son, I can't remember his name. You were at the Next Gen conference.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name. I know he's a little hot topic right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into that. But his son preached at a conference, and his son, I can't remember his name, but unbelievable communicator. Like one of the best communicators I've heard in a long time. But he focused on how he preached instead of what he was saying. Where I think a lot of people, we just focus so much on what we're saying instead of how we say it. So I'd say that's a big part. And then third thing, I would say, let's see, what else? Another tip I would give. There's so many with preaching that I love. And so I'd say with communicating, third thing would be to focus on practicing. That's another thing I think
Right.
a
Yes.
lot of people stop doing. I practice once before I preach on Wednesdays and 5 to 7 times before I preach on Sundays. And so, and I've been doing this for, 10 years, but I still practice every Wednesday before I preach to the youth. I practice once my sermon, whole thing through. And then if I preach on a Sunday or a bigger event, I'll practice 3 to 5 times. And I think a lot of people, they stop practicing, they stop focusing on developing. And so that's something that I think and it's so funny because I'll tell that to the people I mentor, our interns, all that stuff, and they'll kind of look at me like I'm crazy. They're like, but nobody's in the room. I'm like, it doesn't matter. You got to preach to nobody. You got to preach in the mirror. Like you've told me that. You got to preach when nobody's there.
Hey,
And
I wish we could write a book on our hum class.
yeah,
And
it's a
all of
real.
the kids who came through. Listen, I was there too, man. I was terrible,
Mhm.
terrible. And if I didn't love the kids, I don't know, they wouldn't have come back. But
Yeah.
so many incredible stories, man. Still to this day, and I'm going to have her on. Monica Morgan. I don't know if you remember Monica Morgan.
It's
Monica was
familiar.
Monica is, I'm not hyping. People have heard me say this. Monica Morgan was the children's pet. She went through North Central, went through our HOM classes, got the highest grade in HOM than anyone I ever taught in 17 years. Okay,
Hmm.
Monica Morgan. That's a girl, by the way. She then became one of the children's directors at River Valley Church and is now in Houston at some little bitty church with Joe. Anyway, and we're going to have her on because she is a great communicator, but can tell you how quickly she learned how to do this just by practicing.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what you're talking about, Taylor. It's so powerful.
Mhm.
Okay, listen, we can't go any further unless Leah gets on here. So,
I think
Leah,
she's in bed. She's ready to go into
she
bed.
was on. Leah, if you're still on, send me a request to go live. I'm going to give you like just seconds. So if you're there, I see the thumbs up. Let's see if she's coming because we
I
got
don't.
it. We're going to pray for you if she's here. Uh, everybody that knows Leah's like, please, Leah, Leah. Okay, maybe she's not here. Um, Adam, good to have you. Tim Cruz, good to have you. Taylor, if you would you give us a final encouragement on Gen Z, Alpha Gen, and preaching, and just pump them up a little Okay, Leah said hello. Send me a request to come live, Leah, and I'm going to bring you on this, and then we're going to pray it out.
Um,
If she knew how.
there was a question that I wanted to quickly. So it says, how do you prepare to preach, or how long is
Yes,
your prep time?
hit it.
So what I do, see, it's bedtime for our nurse, Jeff. Actually, she's in
Jessica's like,
bed. She's
what?
probably. I'm surprised she's on here. She was about to go to sleep.
Okay, okay.
Um, so quickly to answer that question is that Mondays I do my outline. And so I get all my outline done, and that's like just like a half an hour to an hour. And then Tuesday morning for about 2 to 3 hours, I'll write my whole message. And so I know some people are like, oh, you got to spend 8 to 10 hours or 16. I know sometimes you've said that, but as a next gen pastor, as a youth pastor, with meetings, with all these things going on with kids, games, all that stuff, it's just, it's not, for me at least, it's not possible to spend 8 hours. And so I do outline Monday, and then I preach,
Good.
or sorry, I write Tuesday morning, and then my content's done. And so just wanted to answer that question because I know somebody
That's
just
good.
tuned in.
That's good. And I know that it's bedtime because you are in the Eastern time zone and I'm keeping you all up late. I just like to stay up late because the West Coast people don't go to bed for a couple hours anyway.
Hey,
Man,
I could be on here forever,
yeah.
so I love
Julio,
this stuff.
Julio Navarro, great to have you. You, Millie, I haven't seen you in a long time.
Millie's
And
family.
Millie is fam. She is fam. Encourage us the last minute here. And then would you say a prayer for all of these leaders? Zach Danger Green. Wow.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I would just say when it comes to preaching, and it's going to sound kind of generic, but just keep doing it. And don't think, I think the biggest thing that we struggle with is that it's not effective, or it's not working, or it's a waste of time, or kids' lives aren't being changed. But I believe with all my heart that if we preach God's word, his word
Mm,
says it doesn't return void.
nope.
So we might feel like we're not a great communicator, but hey, that's where God and the Holy Spirit gets to move. And so if we're obedient, I believe with everything in me that God's going to see something happen in the kids' lives that you're preaching to. And so my encouragement is just keep doing it. Don't give up. I love the saying, come back next week. And that's just, it rings true in my heart is, hey, even if you preach poorly, or if kids didn't respond,
Come
or you felt like, man, it was a
on.
terrible message, hey, come back next week, do it again, keep throwing seed, keep
Yes.
investing,
Yes.
and I believe with all my heart, because I believe God's word, that there's going to be a harvest and that something's going to take root. And so
Come on.
just encourage, just keep doing it,
You
keep getting
know,
better.
I'm telling
And
you, what you're hearing is elite stuff tonight. Thank you again. We're talking uh, to one of my favorite people. We've known each other for a long time.
we're family.
We are fam. And Taylor Murphy is in at Grand Rapids First in Michigan. And we have a saying that we've shared around here. Before you pray for us, we have a saying that we really push here. And that is, if I had the choice between theater and theology, I choose theology.
Yeah.
I'm not here just to be into theatrics and push, theater and drama. And we're here to teach because theater has given us a 4% biblical
Yeah.
worldview.
Right.
And the only way we're going to change that is with theology.